Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for JFF's Center of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning webinar on understanding competency-based apprenticeship programs. In this one-hour webinar, we will explore the growing influence that competency-based learning frameworks and program models are having on apprenticeship in the United States. To get us started, I'm going to introduce Eric Seleznow, Senior Advisor at JFF, and the fearless leader of the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning, who will be moderating this conversation today. So with that, I will hand it off to Eric Seleznow, Senior Advisor to JFF.
Thank you, Emma. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending upon where you are. Thanks for joining us today. Really happy you could make or you wanted to make the time to join us for a conversation about competency-based apprenticeships. We got an incredible, overwhelming response to this session, so obviously there's a thirst for knowledge and information out there. So thanks for joining, and on behalf of the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning at JFF, welcome. I also want to just thank our supporters of this event and funders of this event, Walmart and Salesforce, and especially Salesforce, who is supporting today's webinar. Salesforce.org is the philanthropic arm of Salesforce.com. So thanks for that. You know, we have some general themes Emma just talked about. I'm joined today by an illustrious panel of folks. I'll get to their introductions shortly, all the way from official at the Department of Labor to other folks who are out in the field doing this work. And so I'll get to those later. But you can go to the next slide, Rachel. But I'm Eric Seleznow, and I'm here in our Washington, D.C. office today, where it's a beautiful day in D.C. I lead the center. And have the good fortune to interact with many of you folks on the line and across the country to really see what's been going on with apprenticeship and work-based learning. You know, the competency, well, I'll get to the competency stuff in a minute. JFF, next slide, please. We design innovative solutions and scale proven practice. Oh, look, I should probably be doing the agenda. Our agenda today, there it is, you see it, we'll do an overview, we'll have a panel discussion, and then towards the end I'm going to speak fast so we can get questions in, and obviously Emma, they can do questions on the chat, and then we'll try to take them as it comes today, or we'll get to them at the end, and we're going to speed through our conversation so we can hear from you, so please gear up your questions. All right, next slide, please. So JFF, we've been around for 35 years. We're involved in a lot of employment, education, and training work to help people advance in today's labor market, advance in the workforce to get good jobs, earn good wages, and pathways to the middle class. We design a lot of innovative solutions. We scale programs. We try to influence industry and others. Next slide, please. So many of you all know JFF because JFF has been around. I've only been with them for about a year and a half, but I lead our Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. Next slide. And we launched the center to be a go-to place for the practitioner community. We want to spur mainstream adoption of apprenticeship and high-quality work-based learning programs across the country. And we want to provide employers with the skilled workers they need, and we want to provide workers with pathways to good jobs and good wages in the middle class. So please visit our site, Center number 4 for Apprenticeship, .jff.org. We just launched a new refreshed website this week. We've got a lot of great resources and articles on it, and we'll be building that website up over the coming days. So there's a plug for Center number 4 apprenticeships.jff.org. It's up on your screen. Please visit. Next slide, please. And don't worry, there's not going to be a ton of slides today, folks, so I'll get through these quickly. But let's talk a little bit about apprenticeship, right? There's been a major transition, as all of you know, in the world of apprenticeship in the last 4 to 5 years has been, you know, for the last 81 years of apprenticeship in this country, or really the last couple hundred years, but really the last 81 years since the National Apprenticeship Act was passed. There's been activity in apprenticeship, but really there's been major activity in apprenticeship the last 5 years, major investments by the federal government, by states, by local areas, by workforce, community colleges, community-based organizations, a lot of interest, energy, and involvement in the apprenticeship and work-based learning movement. And, you know, as traditionally with, you know, the history of apprenticeships, we have, you know, your basic registered apprenticeship program, which is sort of the spine of the system. range from 1 to 6 years, have a set hour of about 2,000 hours of OJ on-the-job training per year with 144 hours of related classroom instruction. And then over the years, that's changed a little bit, and competency-based education and competency-based education applied to the apprenticeship system is taking a larger and larger role every day, and people are asking a lot of questions about it. When you think about it, competency-based approaches really aligns well with work-based learning and apprenticeship, because that's what it's all about, being on the job, learning competencies and skills, being observed, having it measured, mastering it, and moving on. So competency-based works very well. A lot of people learn by doing, and we can observe their efforts, and they can demonstrate competency in front of us. I think about my 16-year-old getting his driver's license. He took driver's ed. That was his classroom portion. He did driver's ed on the road. That's where he practiced his skill. He took a test, which was fine that he took the test, but I really wanted to demonstrate wanted him to demonstrate, and so I could observe his competency skills at driving the car, and I still haven't gotten quite used to that yet. But you know, sort of an example in life, and we're going to hear some better examples of that, I hope, from our panelists today. But, you know, with competency-based, we want demonstrated observable behavior. You know, our history here, we have seat time and testing. We've heard loud and clear from employers and others that seat time and testing is nice, but it doesn't give us the whole story about somebody's competency. We want to see them on the job. We want to measure, and some people want to check them off one by one to ensure their apprenticeship, their student, or the worker is achieving very specific competencies. Next slide, please. So with that very brief background on that, we know that competency programs, we've heard from employers and we hear from our panels, you know, this could be speed involved, right? People, or maybe just the opposite. Sometimes people move in advance and ahead of their classroom training, and they learn their competencies more efficiently and quicker and can move on to their next one instead of waiting to the end of the semester. And likewise, some students may need, or workers may need more time to master a competency. But it does provide an accurate reflection of skills and can avoid unnecessary delays, certainly on the employer end, who somebody's trying to move a student or worker through a program quicker to get their pipeline going and people skilled up. So next slide, please. So I'm really just scratching the surface here. I want to welcome my friend and colleague, Zach Boren, who's the Chief of the Division of Program Quality and Standards and Policy for the Office of Apprenticeship at the United States Department of Labor, right across the street from us here in D.C. Boy, that's a mouthful to say, Zach, but thanks for joining us today. Zach's been a principal shaper of policy and programs with the United States Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeship. Many of you on the phone know him, and I really want to thank Zach for joining us today in helping us join these, talk about competency-based. So, Zach, welcome.
Well, thank you, Eric.
Okay, look, Zach, I want to start off the call and we only have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to move through it pretty quickly. But let's talk a little bit about when we say competency-based apprenticeships or using competency-based approaches in apprenticeship. What are we talking about? Where's the Department of Labor with this? What do you hope to see? And sort of give us a background of maybe the history and where you are today.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think your slides, you did a really nice job on your slides, by the way, just kind of covering competency. But, you know, we define it in a couple of places on what we mean by the competency-based approach. So the three approaches, time, hybrid, you know, which is kind of a mix between competency and time, and then your straight competency model. And so with competency, we really are looking at an apprentice progressing through the apprenticeship by identifying what are those measured competencies that we want this apprentice to get through the apprenticeship. So just to give you a little bit more, what is that technical definition? We mean the attainment of manual, mechanical, or technical skills and knowledge as specified by an occupational standard, which, you know, in registered apprenticeship, you submit to the Department of Labor or your state apprenticeship agency, and it is, you know, it's written down in that work process schedule or the on-the-job learning curricula that the employer or the industry association or that union submits to the department. You talked a little bit about hybrid as well, which I think is really important to take a look at as well. And so that's really that combination of time plus you're checking on at certain periods during that apprenticeship what that apprentice is learning. So these and being able to demonstrate those skills through the apprenticeship. So, we define these in two places. It's really in the federal regulations that were passed, that were issued in 2008 that cover the standards of apprenticeship. And then we also issued a circular about a little over 2 years ago that takes a look at these three types of approaches, and we define those approaches there in circular 2016-01. You can find it on dol.gov/apprenticeship, and you come to our website if you're looking for that. And I think the other thing that I think, when we talk to employers all across this country, one thing that I think folks, sometimes they're still confused about is like, okay, I'm checking on competencies, but does this also have to be a 2,000-hour apprenticeship program? Right. And the answer to that is yes. We're expecting it to still last about a year. So, really, even though you have your competency program and you're not associating necessarily hours with those competencies to be gained through the apprenticeship, we're still expecting that apprenticeship should last about a year.
Yeah, at least, right?
Yeah.
And then to demonstrate and practice competencies and skill attainment, all that. So that's important notion. Zach, let me ask you a follow-up to that. So I say, well, wait, we got to have 144 hours, right? The DOL says we got to have 144 hours of the related technical instruction. So what's your answer to that? How is that then applied in your competency-based approach?
Sure. So in the competency-based approach, you're really looking at what they're able to demonstrate on the job. And then additionally, there's the classroom instruction. And so you're going to be showing through written assessments, in that 144 hours, that you also understand the theory. So that's sort of, it kind of adds on to the competency-based apprenticeship as well, because you're having to demonstrate what you know through some seat time in the classroom. So we say 144 hours, just kind of note this, that it's a recommended minimum. So we do have some flexibility there if it's a little bit less or if it's more. You need to add additional hours to get your apprentices across the line.
Okay, but as far as sitting for a test or being able to move on to other skills on the work site, an employer can use that work process schedule or some sort of checklist then to evaluate, demonstrate, observe the competencies and check those off?
Yeah, so absolutely. We've seen a variety of different employers come in and decide how they're going to determine those competencies as they go through the program. Assessments of on the job and off the job should really be carried out in a structured basis. So that written plan to include the coursework, practical assessments, theoretical assessments, and written and practical end testing can really be utilized. So what do I mean by that? So we have, a place where competency-based approach can be really checked off by the employer in particular and, really determine where that apprentice sits. So if you're looking at, maybe, an employer having a numerical scale and say it's 1 to 4. So 4 is can this apprentice perform the work without any supervision. And then 3 is really can they do it satisfactorily. 2 is can they do it but they need some more assistance. And 1 is they can do the skill satisfactorily but really requires some considerable assistance. And so the employer can do that throughout the apprenticeship program to check off those job tasks that apprentice can do those, can prove that they can do them. The other thing that we're seeing more and more, especially with some of our foreign counterparts and organizations that participate in programs that are sponsored by the German American Chamber of Commerce, is that they're also doing third-party evaluation. So actually providing a third party to come in and ensure that they're meeting that industry standard. So that's another way where you're really kind of upping that level of check on the apprentice. Can they do the job to an industry standard?
Okay. So when we let's move on from this. So there's a perception, Zach, that competency programs are more appealing to employers, they're easier, they're faster to deliver, they're easier to implement. We just got a question about that. What do you hear from employers? What do you hear from the field? What are the advantages for employers or sponsors in doing competency-based?
Yeah, so, I think the department is really, agnostic, when it comes to what employers want to do, whether it's what is your approach, is it hybrid competency or time-based. So, for folks that are using time-based, totally a valid option, especially in the traditional trades where, there's this deep history of time-based models. Moreover, those programs that have come over from Europe, from Germany, from Switzerland, have really depended on the time-based model with industry validating testing to ensure that the apprentice can demonstrate their competency in a variety of different models. But we also see industries that are a bit newer to apprenticeship, so take IT, healthcare, maybe more apt to using the competency-based or hybrid model, because that's how their industry has really come up with training apprentices. So there may be options to allow for apprentices to complete early or take longer if they need to gain that proficiency, and a willingness to incorporate the verification of skills through certifications or even management testing.
Right, excellent point. And so have you, so really it's the employer choice, right? And I've heard some employers speak very pointedly about they're committed to doing competency-based because they want to move people along more efficiently in their training system. But so it's really the employer's choice and should work with their training provider or college or whoever they're working with to make that happen. So you mentioned a couple of occupations. Is there any sort of trends or patterns of which occupations lend themselves more to competency-based?
Again, I don't know if there are occupations that lend themselves better to competency-based programs. Again, it's really the choice of the employer in partnership with the industry to recognize the training in a particular field. And that's part of the process that DOL helps support when new occupations are recognized as apprenticeable. So, you look at, the department has over 1,000 occupations that we've recognized. We recognize them in a variety of different approaches. Some are recognized in hybrid, competency and time-based. Some just competency-based because that's what the employer came in with. And we're really looking at, modernizing and really making that list a bit more rational for employers to be able to find what industry they're looking for and to be able to use the type of approach that they want to use to be able to train apprentices and make sure that it's appropriate for the industry.
And Zach, a question came in about, nimbleness and flexibility. Making the point that, in healthcare, IT, there's changing technology, changing practices. I'm sure there are in manufacturing and cyber and elsewhere as well. And so, is that, is there nimbleness there? Is it more flexible than the others, or does either model work in either one of them?
Well, we definitely, our approach has been to really hear from employers about what they want to do you know, in doing a registered apprenticeship. One of the things that, you know, not a lot of folks realize that the department does, but we actually validate the work process schedule and the related instruction outline. So both that on-the-job training and the classroom instruction with industry. So when industry, you know, employer comes up to us, you know, I'm Joe's Machine Shop. I have an interest in doing, you know, a machining apprenticeship. I want to do it competency-based, and, you know, we want to have these. We haven't recognized that yet. We're going to go out to the major industry players, and we're going to ask them, does this work process schedule, does this related instruction outline make sense to getting someone to proficiency in that particular occupation? And so that's part of the goal and part of the thrust of what DOL does every day is really to recognize those occupations that industry wants to apprentice in, and we help employers do that.
Great. So I think the real, you know, for me, my takeaway is this: for those of us who are practitioners in the field, in the workforce system, education system, working with employers, sponsors, labor, whoever, it's really for us to listen to what the employers want, listen to the program they're trying to craft that's going to meet their needs, and trying to craft solutions that work for the employer, whether they're time-based, hybrid, or competency-based. And I guess the nod here is that a lot of employers probably need to be educated a little bit more about what competency-based are, and they may give them some more choices. So we're going to have to move on to our next caller, Zach. But before we go, I want to ask you one last question, and then I'll lead into our next person, if she's even on the line. The Department of Labor has been trying to advance competency-based frameworks and competency-based occupation models, and you've done some work with the Urban Institute to do that. And I'm wondering if you could sort of give us a little bit of background on that before we lead into our next session.
Sure. Yeah, so, you know, the future of competency-based apprenticeships is really going to be determined by industry, but, you know, the department is really helping support this with a contract we established with the Urban Institute, so glad to have Diana on the phone with us to talk a little bit about that project, to develop these competency-based occupational frameworks that on-the-job curricula that has been vetted through a variety of methods, and has been vetted with industry. And when we release these competency-based occupational frameworks, we're saying that DOL has basically blessed these as a way to, you know, incorporate these into your apprenticeship, because we know that they've been vetted thoroughly by the industry that would use them. So this year we approved 10 occupations. We focused on those that we both needed because DOL, you know, maybe didn't have a work process schedules, you know, such as the cybersecurity technician occupation that we wanted to get into, and frankly, our grantees needed. And then to those that where we're seeing a lot of growth in apprenticeships. So transmission line worker is a place where we see a heavy use of using the apprenticeship model to train, you know, professionals in those fields. And so that's why we're happy to work with Urban. We're continuing that work through the next year to create some of these more off-the-shelf competency-based work process schedules. So that's our future for at least for the next year on these.
All right, Zach, thanks very much. We're going to have to move on, but Zach, I'm going to ask you to hold on a second. I want to move to our next call and really our next session of this. And advance the slide, please, and you'll see we've assembled a great panel of experts here. And besides Zach, we have we'll be going to Diana Elliott, I think, Manny Lamarre from the great state of Nevada, and Cheryl Olson from Truckee Meadows Community College. We'll be going to them shortly. But the next thing we wanted to do is go to Diana Elliott with the Urban Institute. Diana, are you on the line? I know you were traveling today, so I don't know if your plane got delayed, but are you on the line, Diana? Because if not, Zach, I'm going to keep you on the line for another minute just to continue to talk about Urban's work, and we'll briefly zip through this. So, Diana, last call. All right. I'm going to assume she's stuck in an Uber or stuck in an airport somewhere. And so, Zach, if you're still with me, you still there, Zach?
I'm still here.
Great. So if Diana joins, I'm going to ditch you real quick, but we are nothing if not flexible here at JFF Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. Again, I want to talk just a little bit more, and I'm going to ask you to sub maybe at as Diana here with Urban, and you can go to the next slide, please. So without going into a great detail, you just gave us some background there. Next slide, please. You know, again, just to talk a little bit more of what Urban's doing, I think we can see they're trying to improve the quality of apprenticeship programs, improve the consistency, and facilitate the review of applications by apprenticeship staff with the competency frameworks. But next slide, please. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what you're seeing from Urban.
Yeah, so, you know, we have had this contract. This will be our third year on the contract, and we're extending it for another year to really create these frameworks or these work process schedules that, you know, are nationally approved. And so we've released 10 of those. I talked earlier a little bit about some of those that we focus on: cybersecurity, transmission worker, medical assistant, just to name a few of those. And so I think a few things, you know, on this slide are really important. Consensus-based is one of those pieces, is that, you know, Urban really started out with looking at some of the international models that train workers in this field, as well as some of the work process schedules that, you know, we approved here at the Office of Apprenticeship for use through the registered apprenticeship system. And then they really into a competency-based format, and then went out to industry to make sure that, you know, these were actually reliable work process schedules that the industry could use and that they could use, you know, universally. Secondarily, that non-proprietary piece is really important. You know, these are something that are being paid for
Hello?
by the public. Is that Diana?
Yes. Oh, you can hear me now.
Maybe I'll let Diana take over here.
I was caught in
Zach,
mute.
let me let you off the hook, Zach. Thank you very much. And I'm going to pivot to Diana with the Urban Institute. And Diana, I assume your plane or your Uber landed.
Yeah. In fact, yeah. I think I was just caught in the net. So I'm now happy to be on the line.
All right. Well, we're running short on time, but thank goodness you were able to join us. And I don't know if you're in front of a computer, but we're looking at the benefits of competency-based occupational frameworks. And let me just turn it over to you for a minute to give us an update on what are the occupational frameworks that are available, and how might I use them, and any other background about it. So welcome, Diana Elliott from the Urban Institute.
Thank you, and thank you so much to Zach for doing such a good job of teeing it up. And, you know, the Department of Labor has been such wonderful partners in this work, and we're just delighted to be able to continue this for another year. So as you were talking about sort of the benefits of competency-based occupational frameworks, and we call them CBOF for short, so I'm going to use that throughout. But they really do provide this ready-made framework, as Zach referenced, this off-the-shelf model that you can just jump into and use to create your own program, to think about resources and what you might want if you want to do an off-the-shelf program. So the benefits really here are that they're consensus-based, meaning they're not linked to any one employer. In the past, frameworks have been linked to one employer. You might not have been able to access them. And in this case, they're non-proprietary and they're available in the world for all to use. And similarly, they're very, very high quality. So our team does a lot of rigorous research. We pull together all of the available work process schedules we can find. We collect information from ONET, from other resources, from DACOMS. We do a very comprehensive review of what's out in the world, and then we draft, and then we vet it, and we do a really important job of vetting this, as Zach referenced, with industry and with employers. So the process is pretty comprehensive. So again, we collect all of this material, and then we, we create occupations with input from employers, from the Department of Labor. We really try to keep our ears to the ground to hear what's the next occupation that we should be developing. And then after we do that comprehensive review, we put together that first draft that really captures the major job functions and then starts to identify the competencies within those job functions that somebody in that occupation, in that apprenticeship would need to have. And then third, once we have that solid draft, we work with a lot of external partners, and that could be employers, trade associations, apprenticeship experts, to solicit expert feedback to refine and finalize these drafts through consensus. And this process can be really iterative and lengthy. It's probably the most lengthy part of our process. It involves a lot of back and forth, and we want to make sure that we get it right.
So Diana, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure thing.
Speaking about lengthy, we're getting a little lengthy on time, but I want to get to the most important part of this, I think, at least for me and maybe the audience. So after you go through all of this effort to get it right,
Yep.
I'm a practitioner, I'm a community college, I'm a intermediary in apprenticeship space, I'm somebody involved in the practitioner or sponsor community at an apprenticeship. Can I take these off the shelves and build a program around them? How would you recommend I use these and to move forward a program, working with an employer, working with a partnership to advance an apprenticeship?
Absolutely. They can be used straight off the shelf. If you want to start a program, these are intended to be able to have you start that program with really minimal effort, right? So we've done all the hard work of researching and creating these frameworks. We've done the hard work of getting industry feedback and vetting on the work. They're really intended to make the lift a lot lighter to start these programs. In some cases, employers might want to customize them a little. If they customize them, it might have to go through a slightly more involved review process with the Department of Labor, but there's that option as well. And sometimes we've heard from people they really simply want to use them as a resource. So they're available in a variety of capacities for people to use. Mostly we want people to use them and preferably use them to start registered apprenticeship programs sooner rather than later.
Wow. So, you know, I mean, that's, for me, out in the field, you know, people keep asking. I see all these similar programs come in and go out all the time. It's like, you know, 7 colleges are doing the same program now, slightly different curriculum or slightly different guidelines or standards. So there's a way to standardize, uniform, and really make it easier for the field, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and consistency and quality, right, and that's really important as well. And if you want to advance the slide that shows the ones that Zach referenced, the 10 that we have out there, and then the 8 others that will hopefully be out in the world in the fall, I think that'll give people on the call a flavor for the variety of occupations that we've researched and produced these frameworks for.
Great. So I'm out in the field, I'm working away, so where do I go? Do I go to DOL? Do I go to Urban Institute? Where do I go to gather this information and get smart on occupational and competency-based frameworks, Diana?
Yeah, sure thing. If you go to my last slide, it's where do I find them? And they're available on the dol.gov/apprenticeship page. And if you pull down the resources tab, you'll see a link for competency-based occupational frameworks. And from there, you can navigate to find the ones that are available for use. So again, as Zach referenced, 10 have been officially approved, and then there's another 8 in the works. So our website at Urban has all of them posted, but just keep in mind that only 10 of those are officially approved.
Yeah. I really want to encourage folks to go look at these. When I've looked in on your website and looked at these, I was amazed at how simple they are, right? How organized they are, how they work into a process flow of competencies and skills. It's not jargon, you know, it's really simple language that describes the job, the skills, the competency. So I really want to compliment you for doing it's complicated work to get there, but really simple. And I would imagine that was your goal for the field.
It really was. It really was. And I have to say a big shout out to all of the partners, I'm sure many of whom are on the line right now, who helped us with that and helped us put it in a less jargony way, who helped us use the appropriate terminology for each industry and occupation. So thank you to everyone on the line who has helped us so far. And if you haven't helped us, maybe you'll help us in the future. Contact me if you're interested.
Great, or contact us and we'll connect you to Diana and the good folks over at Urban who are doing great work in apprenticeship. Diana, thanks so much for calling in from the road. Really appreciate that you're making this call from the back seat of an Uber, but thanks for joining. And we're gonna move on now, and if you can stay on the line, any questions come up, or we'll shoot them to you after this if you have to go. So thank you, Diana.
Sure,
thanks. All right, thanks. So let's move across the country to the great state of Nevada. And Manny will correct me if I pronounce it wrong, because I always do, but I'm joined now by Manny Lamarre. He'll correct me on that too. Manny's the Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation in the great state of Nevada, and really has done a great deal of transformation and reform work and alignment work in Nevada. And I really want to thank Manny for coming on to really give us a state perspective on what's going on with apprenticeship, how they've reformed it, and more specifically will then narrow down into his view of the competency approach and all that. So Manny, welcome to us, and please correct me on all my mispronunciations. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. And hello, everyone. Glad to join you all. So I'll try to be efficient so we can have time for questioning, so Cheryl can have time to dive deeper too on some examples. But really quickly, as it relates to Nevada, when we think about competency-based and how we think about apprenticeship more specifically, you all may know this already, whereas during the Great Recession, Nevada was one of the hardest hit states in the country, and mainly in terms of mainly because we didn't have a diversified economy. So when things are good, it's really good, and when things are bad, it's really bad. And so the Governor Sandoval really took leadership to really think about how do we support, one, this growing needs of businesses, and two, our workforce and workers. And so apprenticeship emerged as one of the top priorities in terms of the workforce ecosystem. So as the Governor and the Governor's Office of Economic Development had tremendous success of bringing in new companies and diversifying the base of our industries, then there came the challenge, which is a good challenge, but one that creates a sense of urgency and a lot of work, which is, well, now we're bringing in these companies in advanced manufacturing and IT and so on, and healthcare. How are we going to then support the workforce? So one of the things that the Governor did was really rethink about apprenticeship system. And so during the last session, there was a bill that reorganized apprenticeship. So it moved the apprenticeship to our office, and particularly the Office of Workforce Innovation became codified as part of the office within the Governor's office. We made 4 specific changes to align the apprenticeship system, and all those 4 changes, quite frankly, connects to the competency-based and hybrid approach when we think about apprenticeship. The first one was, quite frankly, and this is actually in 29 CFR Part 29, which is around demonstrating linkage and coordination with the state's economic development strategies. And so, again, going back to as we brought in those new industries to Nevada, and those were part of our economic development strategies, we wanted to ensure that apprenticeships was linked, and we had a strategy to support that. We made some other changes as well as we thought about the policy perspective on the state level, the membership on the State Apprenticeship Council. We don't need to go into details on this here, but as you all know, some states are, essentially we have a State Apprenticeship Council, and so we wanted to think strategically about the Apprenticeship Council, given that they have engagement with, as it relates to apprenticeship. So we included membership from economic development. We include membership of higher ed. We included, as it relates to the voting members, we included members that represented different industries. So we have healthcare represented on the council. We have a small business representative represented on the council, and an IT representative on the council. And that's important because as you work to try to develop these competency-based apprenticeships, particularly in a state like Nevada with an apprenticeship council, you need to have the individuals in place that can speak to the needs of their industries. Before, most of our apprenticeships were in the construction industry, and they really leveraged the time-based approach, and that's a strong aspect, at least from the people on the ground in Nevada there. However, as we got these new industries, we wanted to ensure that, again, demonstrate linkage in coordination with our economic development strategy, but then actually engage when they get to like on the ground. We had those people represented on the council. The other really quick thing I would add is just that having a state apprenticeship director and having it be Owen working within the governor's office, we're actually really positioned to, because we connect with K-12, post-secondary, business and industry, labor, and this is also another important aspect, which is a publicly funded workforce system, because we leverage those. So, for example, I sit on the Governor's Workforce Board, and so as we think about our state plan, that piece is integrated with it. So that's really, I think, on the state level, how we took the approach to change and deepen apprenticeship system within the state policy perspective.
Great. So, Manny, so before we move on to Cheryl at Truckee Meadows, let me just ask you, what advice do you have for folks out there in the states, either your state or others, but people are on the ground doing this work, talking to employers, trying to create partnerships, trying to advance apprenticeship and other forms of work-based learning. So what advice do you have for them as they work within their state's infrastructure, the federal infrastructure, and anything specific on the competency-based approach?
Yeah, good question. So I would just say like a few really quick pieces on that, which is as you're actually talking to those employers, you synthesize what they're saying and articulate that so for example, when we started having conversation with employers in industry, one of the things that we heard from the employer side was that one size doesn't fit all as it relates to their industry. They needed immediate solutions, and then the rapid changes to technology and its impact on, quite frankly, all industries, an arbitrary time limit is not as well positioned for some of their demands. So I say that to say sometimes we have these conversations with employers, but we don't synthesize we don't synthesize and articulate some of the specific things that we've heard, and that's one thing that I would 100% say in terms of that. Two, of course, the partnership is just really important, and I know Cheryl will talk about this. We didn't see this as a zero-sum game, so initially when we started having the conversation, particularly in the state level and the local level, it was that it wasn't one industry versus another industry. It wasn't one institution versus another institution. It wasn't a zero-sum game. So we actually articulated the fact that it actually benefits all industries and all people, and that I would say is extremely important. And the final thing I would say is, of course, is as it relates to the partnership, of course, work closely with your various partners. So reaching out to the U.S. Department of Labor, reaching out to the higher ed institution, and then connecting with individuals within the workforce system, whether it's your state, individuals on the state board, business, and so on, because you're going to need that, quite frankly, that capital and to engage in some of these conversations with all of these various stakeholders. So I would say that is, I mean, it really just can't be overstated because of the challenge of when you're reforming a system or moving things across, that comes as an important piece.
Yep. I think what you're saying is you really have to be bilingual or trilingual or quadlingual. You need to speak employer, you need to speak college, you need to speak workforce. You really need to understand where all these things fit in developing an apprenticeship partnership. Manny from the great state of Nevada, thank you very much. I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
Yeah, I was going to say something really, really quickly. I promise the last thing I'll say is that when we talk about the competency-based approach from the perspective of business, it's also just equally important to talk about it from the perspective of the workforce or the individuals that was engaging in it. We know that, and we heard this from employers, but we also heard this from people in the community, that you had workers with meaningful work and life experiences, and that would be better, that the competency-based approach allows them to actually now to engage in apprenticeship, because they know that their background or the asset that they come in with will be leveraged as part of that approach and not as it relates to the time base. So that's just another important aspect that, whether it's an individual that's, maybe they've been in the workforce for a while and they're just looking to reskill, or they're looking to go into a new industry, or they have some experience, that it was an important sell as well, that they can leverage some of the background and some of the information they already had to prove that they can engage and meet the certain level of benchmark within an industry. I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Manny, from the great state of Nevada, and you know, it's great to see states sort of reforming and bringing their apprenticeship and workforce and education systems all closely together, and compliments the governor for his reform efforts and for your part in it, so thank you, Manny. So let's move down the road in the great state of Nevada, and I want to talk to Cheryl Olson. Cheryl is with Truckee Meadows Community College. She's a project director of Nevada's Apprenticeship project, and has been working on American Apprenticeship Grant and other activities over the years, part of local workforce system and everything. But she's with Truckee Meadows Community College, which has done a great job in the last year or two, really signing up some major employers for apprenticeships. So Cheryl, welcome. Can you hear me okay?
Cheryl, you're muted.
There you go. Okay,
welcome.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you, Cheryl. Thank you. Hey,
all right.
Thanks for joining us. So tell us a little bit about Truckee Meadows Community College and how you've been engaged in apprenticeship for the last couple of years, and then we'll spend the next minute or two talking about some competency-based and hybrid models.
Sure. So Truckee Meadows Community College, we've been involved with apprenticeship for years now. It really started out with supporting the local union apprenticeship programs and providing academic credit for the related technical instruction, which was included in their programs. All of the training that was provided in those apprenticeship programs were offered at the union facilities, but we granted academic credit for that. So the apprentices could receive academic credentials along with their apprenticeship credentials. So depending on the length of the apprenticeship program, we're able to award skill certificates, certificates of achievements, or even associate degrees. But back in 2016, when we were awarded the American Apprenticeship Initiative grant, we expanded our reach to industries that weren't already utilizing apprenticeship. Our primary focus was advanced manufacturing, but we've since expanded to include healthcare and service industry occupations. Through our AAI grant work, we serve as a sponsor for our programs. That was kind of a lengthy development in understanding what the businesses need in order to truly embrace the apprenticeship model. So now that we're an apprenticeship sponsor, we help businesses across the entire state of Nevada to help develop new apprenticeship programs. And we don't require the employers to utilize just our college's core curriculum. We allow them to utilize whatever related technical instruction makes the most sense for them. So we work with other colleges. Some of the employers actually utilize internal training as part of their RTI. And we try to ensure, you know, in working with the employers, we try to lead them towards working with a college so the apprentices get academic credit and have an academic credential in addition to their apprenticeship. Sure. But sometimes that's not always the best fit.
Sure. Are you getting, when you all talk to employers or sit down to work out a program, are they asking for competency-based? Is there a lack of understanding about it? Do you just try to put together a program that meets their, how do you address sort of which approach you're going to use, whether you can do traditional seat time or focus more on competency-based?
Well, when I approach employers about apprenticeship, really I have to kind of explain all of the options to them. They very rarely have an understanding of anything beyond the time-based model. So in explaining how flexible the apprenticeship model can be and talking about the competency-based or hybrid model, they all seem to gravitate towards the competency-based. These are businesses that, you know, their focus is trying to get things done and quickly, so the competency-based program is much more attractive to them, and they can see adapting, you know, the apprenticeship within their existing system versus the time-based, which is much more structured than they're used to.
Okay, great. And so are there some examples of some programs that you can talk about? Or maybe some employers, maybe not by name, but they use a competency model or checklists, and what have some of those advantages or disadvantages been?
Sure. So one example in healthcare, we have a certified nursing assistant program that's in partnership with our regional hospital. They were having difficulty finding nursing assistants with adequate acute care experience. And in addition to that, when they, would do recruitment fairs for students that went through a nursing assistant program, they found that really 99% of the students that were, getting certified as a nursing assistant, they were just doing it for a prerequisite for a nursing program. They had no desire to actually work as a CNA. So that's how they came to the idea of utilizing apprenticeship to develop their talent. So in working with them, the competency-based model was definitely attractive, one for the adaptability within their system. We actually offer all of the related technical instruction on site at the hospital. It's a college course, so we have our normal college instructor teaching the course. And as they progress in their coursework and they demonstrate their competency and specific skills, then when they're doing their on-the-job training, they can, actually demonstrate those skills and practice those skills on the job. So it's been a really great experience, not only for the apprentices, because they really are embracing and understanding the curriculum much better, but it's been incredibly beneficial for the hospital, because these are people that are coming through with a very deep understanding of how their operation works, the specific needs of an acute care hospital versus, a lot of training for CNAs happens in field nursing and that type of thing. So it's been incredibly beneficial.
So Cheryl, if you look, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to go on to another example, but if we don't have time, I'm happy to skip ahead.
Well, go ahead. Make it a short example, because we love examples, and I have one last question for you.
Okay. So the next is in advanced manufacturing. We have a production operator apprenticeship that's in partnership with Panasonic and Tesla, so two very large employers. And the reason that they embrace the idea of the competency-based model is both of these employers, the Gigafactory is being built in our area, and I say being built because it's still under construction even though they're operating there. They have huge workforce needs, and we don't have a particularly strong history in advanced manufacturing in our region. So they wanted to do a competency-based model because both organizations are very focused on, lean and just-in-time manufacturing. So this really aligns very closely with that ideology. So it was a natural fit for them.
And I believe we've been working with you on that through some of our intermediary work, or at least with your employers. So that's great to hear. So just real quickly, and then we're going to go to some questions. Well, one of the questions that came in is, and I guess it's for you and Manny, and it may be early to ask this question, but is some of the work you're doing in apprenticeship or work-based learning, and even in competency-based, is it helping employers? Is it closing the skills gap? And do you have any data on any of that in terms of numbers? I know these numbers tend to be small and grow over time, but I was just wondering, Manny, if there's any data collected on the progress of your efforts thus far.
Just really quickly, we do actually have some numbers, and this number is actually, what we've done is compared some of the changes from before the transfer to ON to after. So, for example, we've seen 84% increase, and this is actually not even the most recent. This is to May 2018, so it doesn't account for the last 2 months, which we saw some growth. And these data are according to Rapids, where we saw 84% increase in age 16 to 24. We saw overall over 40% increase overall of apprentices. We've seen an increase in minorities, 57% increase, as well as a 26% increase in women. And those are just some of our preliminary data as of May. But the other pieces, to your point around on the employer side data, we've seen a significant, and this is anecdotal, where we keep track of employers that we've had conversations with or engaged with, but we've seen significantly more increase in employers reaching out, asking, saying that now they have a better sense of the flexibility and wanting to continue the conversation. So during the past year, we've actually had new programs, and I believe from the last 3 or 4 years before that, there wasn't any new programs in different industries added at all by now.
Thank you very much, Manny. All right, so Cheryl, Manny and Cheryl, thank you very much. In the interest of time, I want to move in and try to squeeze in as many questions as we can before we have to part. So Cheryl, thank you for the insights on how you approach competency-based at the college level and working with employers. A lot of good lessons there for people on the line. So we've got a number of questions that are coming in, and I'm going to ask the panelists I refer this to just keep a short answer, and we'll move on quickly. And one of the questions came about the competency-based occupational frameworks from Urban. And Zach, if you're still on the line, there's some conversation about, you know, Urban has them, but then you all at the Department of Labor officially release them. Can you clarify that? Can we use them if they haven't been officially released by DOL yet?
Yeah, so I can. So the 10 that we've officially blessed are, you know, basically you can take them off the shelf and they are, you know, ready to go to, you know, be instituted as quickly as you want to put your apprenticeship program together in those 10 occupations. The additional 8 that we've contracted with Urban to do, it definitely recommend that if you want to use those and start an apprenticeship program on the basis that, you know, we anticipate that we will be blessing, you know, these frameworks and releasing them shortly, please do. You know, and that's yeah, and I think that's the short of it. Is please go ahead and use them. Just know that the DOL has not officially released or sanctioned them.
Let's leave that one up there. Yeah, and what was my other great question? It just went out of my head as I was looking at the screen. Oh yeah, and we put, you know, and you can go to, you know, just Google Urban Institute Apprenticeship Frameworks and you can get to their website that way. It was posted on the slides, which we'll be posting shortly, and also they can go to USDOL/apprenticeship and find those competency frameworks on for off-the-shelf use off your website. Got an interesting question from Florida, and I'll really just open this up to any of you, but, you know, a questioner says, you know, we have one or two, we have employers that do a lot of onesies and twosies, and we know in apprenticeship we have a lot of onesies and twosies, and that always makes it hard for a college or a training provider to do a customized class. So, you know, recommendations, obviously you still have to work with your training provider on getting the related technical instruction, but these might be cases where competency-based may help speed things up a bit, or, I mean, you know, still have the issue about getting the RTI. The competency-based could be approach. Manny, Zach, any thoughts about those, or Cheryl, any thoughts about those small employers? I guess one suggestion is to do a sector approach and find multiple employers in that industry sector who will have that need instead of onesies and twosies. That typically works very well if you get 4 or 5 healthcare facilities together, 5 or 6 manufacturers together, 3 hotels together, and to meet the needs of all of them. But panelists, I'm wondering if you have any other suggestions on this one. A lot of onesies and twosies out there.
At Truckee Meadows, we support a lot of employers that have just 1 and 2 apprentices. So we're very familiar with that kind of challenge. And we just incorporate, you know, assuming that we have the coursework that's relevant for that apprenticeship, which fortunately we've been able to accommodate, we incorporate those apprentices into our existing courses, so it doesn't have that financial burden of, you know, needing the large numbers. So we've been very successful with the programs thus far.
We've went through a lot of questions. I see we have a lot of thank yous up there, so you're welcome. I also see we have a lot of our friends on there who've been with us. There's questions about credit for on-the-job training, and I don't know if credit is given for OJT training of itself. Usually it's for the related technical instruction that are often credit or non-credit programs. You know, one questioner is just sort of flagging youth unemployment and the need in this country to advance more youth apprenticeship programs. And I might add that places like Charleston and elsewhere are doing youth apprenticeship programs, registered apprenticeships and other ones, in which they use competency-based approaches to help move students along further and faster. So we're at time today. We have other questions here. We'll see if we can't flag them and get back to you, questioner, on that. I want to thank our panel, Zach Boren from the United States Department of Labor, Manny Lamarre from Governor's Office of Workforce Information in Las Vegas, and Cheryl Olson with Truckee Meadows Community College. and Diana Elliott from the Urban Institute. This has been, we probably could have done another hour and a half on this one, but we just have run out of time. We'll extend them next time. Emma's trying to get my attention for another important question out there, but I can't quite get to that before we cut off. Yeah. So let me put a plug in for the last slide on the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. Check our website. We'll be posting the slides. We'll be posting this if you want to share it with your roommates, classmates, and workmates. And we'll be doing another one, a preview to future webinars. I think we're going to be doing one as we approach National Apprenticeship Week, so keep your eye out for that. And again, I want to plug going to our website and finding a whole range of more than 250 resources there. Go to DOL's website, go to the Urban Institute website, and if you're in Las Vegas, call Manny. We'd love to meet with you. So with all of that, I want to thank everybody for joining JFF and the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning, and have a great day. Thank you, panelists.